Look at that face. That was the chilling sentence that reportedly echoed through royal corridors before one of the most explosive palace investigations anyone could have imagined. What began as whispers behind closed doors suddenly erupted into a transatlantic storm involving accusations, secret dossiers, emergency meetings, leaked information, legal threats, and a growing question that refused to disappear. Was something happening behind the gates of Montecito that powerful people on both sides of the Atlantic were desperately trying to uncover? The story allegedly began when a thick legal file landed inside London carrying claims so serious that palace insiders reportedly abandoned normal protocol and rushed into an emergency gathering. Suddenly, senior royal figures, advisors, and specialists were said to be gathering under extraordinary circumstances. Doors closed, phones disappeared, conversations dropped to whispers. The atmosphere reportedly felt less like a family discussion and more like the opening move of a major operation. And at the center of it all stood Meghan Markle. According to the explosive claims circulating inside the file, concerns had allegedly emerged regarding the involvement of Archie and Lilibet in various projects connected to branding, media appearances, photography sessions, and future commercial plans. The accusations were dramatic. The language was even more dramatic. Some insiders reportedly claimed the children were becoming increasingly central to ambitious business strategies. Others argued these allegations were exaggerated. But one thing became impossible to ignore. The palace was taking them seriously enough to act. Then came the detail that reportedly shocked everyone inside the room. Hidden within the documentation was what sources described as an unusually detailed record of Lilibet's daily activities. Every appointment, every appearance, every scheduled commitment, every movement supposedly documented with remarkable precision. Suddenly, people weren't discussing rumors anymore. They were discussing timelines, patterns, frequencies, numbers, and once people start counting, stories become dangerous. Questions began multiplying rapidly. Why were certain activities increasing? Why were particular projects being scheduled? Why were some records allegedly showing such extensive involvement in content creation and promotional planning? Each answer seemed to create two new questions. Each explanation seemed to deepen the mystery. Meanwhile, another figure reportedly emerged from the shadows of this growing controversy: Prince Harry. According to reports surrounding the allegations, concerns were allegedly being raised from within Harry's own circle. That alone transformed palace anxiety into something much larger. Because if these concerns were truly originating close to Harry himself, then the situation was no longer just another tabloid feud. It became a family crisis. Inside palace walls, King Charles reportedly faced a difficult decision: continue observing quietly or intervene. The answer allegedly came quickly. Sources claim the king authorized Prince Edward to take a leading role in examining the matter. For many royal watchers, that decision immediately raised eyebrows. Why Edward? Why now? Why assign such authority unless the concerns had already crossed a significant threshold? The move sent a powerful signal. This wasn't being treated like gossip. This was being treated like a case. As word of the emergency discussions allegedly spread, panic reportedly began building thousands of miles away in California. Information that was supposed to remain hidden somehow started leaking beyond palace walls. Questions that had been confined to private rooms suddenly became public whispers, and whispers travel fast. Soon, reports suggested Meghan became aware that discussions involving her family were unfolding overseas. The response was reportedly immediate and forceful. Messages were allegedly sent. Objections were raised. Strong statements were delivered. The central argument remained consistent. Decisions regarding Archie and Lilibet belonged inside their household, not inside Buckingham Palace. But by then, the situation had already evolved beyond simple disagreements. Because while public statements were being exchanged, Prince Edward was reportedly preparing something much bigger: legal notices, requests for explanations, demands for records, questions about schedules, questions about contracts, questions about image rights, questions about oversight. Suddenly, every detail mattered. Every photograph mattered. Every appearance mattered. Every signature mattered. What made the situation even more explosive was the growing perception that neither side intended to back down. Meghan reportedly viewed the scrutiny as interference. Palace figures reportedly viewed the scrutiny as responsibility. Both sides believed they were right, and that is when conflicts become dangerous. Then came another reported development that intensified the controversy even further. Discussions allegedly emerged regarding changes to Lilibet's educational arrangements. Supporters described the decisions as parental choices. Critics claimed the timing raised questions. Once again, two completely different interpretations collided head-on. The more explanations appeared, the larger the mystery became. Observers began noticing a pattern. Every attempt to calm the situation seemed to make it louder. Every denial seemed to create fresh speculation. Every clarification appeared to open new avenues of investigation. Meanwhile, Prince Edward reportedly continued moving forward. Letters were allegedly drafted. Requests were allegedly submitted. Officials were allegedly contacted. And somewhere behind all of those developments sat one unsettling reality. Nobody knew exactly how much evidence existed. Nobody knew exactly what information had already been collected. Nobody knew what might emerge next. That uncertainty became its own weapon, because in royal controversies, facts create headlines, but uncertainty creates fear. And according to growing speculation, fear was now spreading through every corner of this story. The palace was watching. California was responding. Lawyers were preparing. Sources were talking. Leaks were multiplying. And what began as private concerns was rapidly transforming into an international battle over authority, responsibility, image, and control. The biggest question wasn't whether the conflict would escalate. The biggest question was what Prince Edward would discover once the investigation truly began. The deeper Prince Edward allegedly dug, the stranger everything became. What had started as a controversial palace inquiry was now evolving into something that looked far larger, far more organized, and far more dangerous than anyone initially expected. Rumors began swirling that investigators were examining not just schedules or appearances, but entire networks of agreements, communications, promotional strategies, and business plans allegedly connected to future projects. Suddenly, people weren't asking whether there was an investigation. They were asking how extensive it had become. Across social media, public opinion reportedly split into two fierce camps. One side viewed Meghan as a mother being unfairly targeted by an institution that refused to let go of control. The other side believed troubling questions needed answers regardless of titles, status, or geography. Every leaked detail ignited new debates. Every anonymous source created fresh controversy. Every television appearance seemed to deepen the divide. Then came one of the most explosive developments of all. According to circulating reports, individuals claiming to possess insider knowledge allegedly began stepping forward. Former associates, former employees, former advisors, each reportedly offering fragments of information that painted dramatically different pictures of life behind the gates of Montecito. Some accounts defended Meghan completely. Others raised disturbing concerns. The result was chaos. Nobody knew who was telling the truth anymore, and that uncertainty became fuel. Suddenly, headlines multiplied daily. Questions surrounding family routines, media projects, educational decisions, and commercial plans dominated conversations. The controversy had evolved beyond palace walls and entered the court of public opinion, where facts, rumors, and speculation were colliding at breathtaking speed. Meanwhile, Prince Harry reportedly found himself trapped in the center of the storm. Observers began noticing that Harry's silence was becoming a story of its own. Every day without a public statement seemed to generate even more speculation. Was he supporting Meghan? Was he privately concerned? Was he caught between loyalty to his wife and concern for his children? Nobody knew. Yet the absence of answers only made people search harder for clues. Then reports emerged suggesting legal strategies were intensifying on multiple fronts. Allegedly, teams of advisors, lawyers, and specialists were working around the clock. Documents were reportedly being reviewed, testimonies allegedly examined, evidence supposedly organized. Every move appeared to signal that neither side expected a quick resolution. At the same time, palace insiders reportedly whispered about something operating behind the scenes, a mysterious initiative, a highly classified operation, a contingency plan designed for the worst possible scenario. The alleged name circulating through royal circles was Project Veil. The name alone created headlines. Nobody could fully explain what Project Veil supposedly contained. Some claimed it was merely a legal framework. Others described it as the monarchy's ultimate response if negotiations failed completely. Whatever the truth, its existence transformed the atmosphere. Suddenly, this wasn't being portrayed as a disagreement anymore. It was being portrayed as a showdown over influence, a showdown over reputation, a showdown over legacy, and perhaps most importantly, a showdown over who would ultimately shape the future narrative surrounding Archie and Lilibet. As reports continued emerging, Prince Edward reportedly moved closer to delivering recommendations that could influence the monarchy's next steps. Sources claimed enormous pressure surrounded every decision. The stakes were no longer personal, they were institutional. For supporters of intervention, the issue had become protecting children. For critics, it had become protecting power. And somewhere between those two narratives stood a family that appeared more divided than ever. The most fascinating part of the entire saga was how quickly it transformed. What allegedly began as concerns discussed inside one closed meeting room had exploded into a controversy stretching across continents. Lawyers became involved, advisors became involved, media organizations became involved, public opinion became involved. Everyone had chosen a side. Everyone had a theory. Everyone believed they knew what was really happening. Yet the closer people looked, the less certainty they seemed to find. And that may be the greatest mystery of all. Because behind every accusation stood a denial. Behind every claim stood a counterclaim. Behind every leak stood another leak waiting to emerge. As the conflict reportedly approached its most critical stage, one question continued hanging over every development. What would happen if the investigation uncovered exactly what some feared? And perhaps even more importantly, what would happen if it didn't? Because by this point, reputations, relationships, and royal futures were already hanging in the balance. The palace had moved. California had responded. The legal battle lines had been drawn. And according to those closest to the unfolding drama, the story was far from over. If anything, the most explosive chapter may still be waiting behind the next closed door.